Okay, day 2 of the Arctic Cat project. I was able to remove the drive shaft on this side that I had disassembled the other day, and I'm not able to determine yet whether or not that joint in there is good or if it's seized up, because I can't really insert the shaft and move it freely to see if it'll swivel around or what it feels like, because the arm is kind of now in the way because it's fully extended because of the shock absorber. So I can't really lift up on this arm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this shock. That'll allow me to swing this all the way up. And then I'm also going to have to remove these ball joints because they're both bad. You can actually feel the play in them. It's pretty worn. The lower one's the same way. But I'm going to have to find my snap ring pliers to get these snap rings, these clips off. And then I'll be able to remove the ball joints. But for now, I'll take the shock off. Now that I have the shock off, you can see the anatomy of the shock a little better. These bushings actually are separate part numbers, so I ordered all new bushings. So I'll replace the bushings on these shocks, and I'll reuse the older shocks for now. They're in pretty bad shape, but I want to at least see if everything else can be rectified before I dump any money into new shocks for this thing. So by removing the shock now, I can actually rotate this arm up, and I'll be able to actually insert that shaft and see if I can figure out exactly what's going on with that. And then also on the shock, on the top of the shock, there's actually a little retaining plate, a metal plate with a slot. And actually the spring is compressed and then it's slid in there, and that's what actually holds the spring assembled to the actual shock absorber inside. And that is what is missing on this side, and it appears like whoever had this had a problem with that, either cracked or fell out, and they tried welding it to keep it in. So I've ordered a new one of those retainers, and I might be able to actually salvage this shock also, again just for now. Interestingly enough, this top arm actually appears to be almost like spring loaded. I don't know if there's some sort of a torsion spring mechanism inside here or what, but when I try and push up on it, it's got quite a bit of resistance and it wants to come right back down, and there's nothing else attached, so there must be a torsion spring arrangement inside here. I even removed the brake line to make sure that wasn't what was holding it up, but now that I have really gotten it apart and push on it, I can see it's got a spring, torsion spring arrangement inside here from what I can gather. So I will have to prop that up. Okay, this U-joint or CV joint inside there, it seems like it might be okay. So I might be able to save both of these joints by just getting the kit, which basically has a new boot and grease to repack that. So I might be able to save those by doing that. But I've discovered a much more serious problem, which I will demonstrate. Okay, so here's the bigger problem. With the unit in first gear, it's in gear. Of course, rear shaft is completely disconnected, but front shaft is still connected. And if I put any drag on the front wheel, I can stop it with my hand, even if I accelerate. So something is definitely wrong with this front differential, or bevel gear assembly as Arctic Cat calls it. I don't know if you can see, but the actual shaft is still rotating in there. Even if I hold my knee on it, I accelerate. Maybe from this angle. Stop it. So that's going to have to come out. Alright, so to remove the front bevel gear assembly, which is right here, it appears to be held in by a bracket up at the top there. And obviously this whole side is going to have to be taken apart so I can get the shaft off of this side, which is just fine because I'm going to have to take that shock out to repair it anyways, and I'm probably going to have to replace the ball joints on this side, and then also the wheel bearing on this side doesn't feel good at all. This whole wheel actually wobbles, so I'm going to check all that out while I get it apart. As if there aren't enough things wrong with this, I noticed when I went to take this wheel off that one of these bolts looks really chewed up, and come to find out of all the bolts, it's the only one that really didn't want to come out. And looking at the threads, they're really galled. Threads are pretty toasted on that. I think I can run a tap and actually clean these threads up and they'll be fine. Of course, I don't have any metric taps, so I'll have to pick one of those up, I think. Oh well. This is interesting. Instead of the castle nut and cotter pin arrangement like the other wheel hub had, this has got a regular nut, and the cotter pin was here, I just removed it, and it's also a different size shaft and nut. Well, all I can say about this side is wow. I mean, wondering why the wheel wobbled. I mean, right off the bat, the amount of rust that I saw on these threads, you know, made me wonder about the condition I was going to find on this side. And of course, a big part of that is due to the fact that this little cap that was on the other side was missing on this side. Who knows for how long. Anyways, the splines on the shaft and in the hub are really rusted, so this was kind of rusted on there. It took some doing to get this off, and then when it came off, immediately I realized why this wheel is so wobbly. You can see the bearing has actually kind of fallen apart. You can see the ball bearings in there. Well, where's the rest of the bearing? It stayed on the hub. So that had actually rusted onto that and didn't want to come off. So this is definitely going to need a new wheel bearing. I kind of suspected that just by the fact it was wobbling. But I'm hoping that the shaft is salvageable. And then also I got to deal with, of course, getting this off of here. This piece off of here. Okay, I've got this knuckle off, the right side knuckle, and one of the things I noticed right off the bat is you can see that this knuckle doesn't have all of that missing metal, and there's no sign of any epoxy or anything like that. So this is, as I suspected, the other one was trashed and somebody had just put some kind of goop on there to try and hold the seal in on the other one. So that other knuckle, I already have the replacement one on order because that also was busted. But that obviously was really in bad shape. This one, the knuckle, looks like it might be salvageable, but it's amazing to me how bad this bearing is. The seal, this outboard seal, has totally failed. There's no sign of any grease inside there on the ball bearings whatsoever. I mean, it's really just amazing that someone continued to try and drive this and move this machine with this in this kind of condition. On the back side here, obviously that seal's also shot, but it's just a shame that people didn't maintain this a little bit better. And I'm sure when this was running and seizing up, who knows what it was doing to that differential, and that may be what led to the problems now that I'm going to have inside that front differential or bevel gear unit. Also, the upper and lower ball joints on this side are also shot, and the part of the bearing actually stayed behind on the shaft here, so I'm going to have to remove that to get that off. Hopefully the shaft can be cleaned up and saved. It looks like the splines are in good shape. That's good news. Here's the shock that was on this side. You can see on the top the actual retaining piece that's supposed to slide in here and keep the shock, the spring on the shock, is completely missing. It looks like at one point somebody tried to actually tack weld it so it wouldn't fall out, but I've got a new one of those on order, as I mentioned earlier. And then on this side I see some weld work on this side of the shock, which is troubling. I mean, I can't imagine what happened to the shock assembly when that heat was applied to it to weld to it. I mean, it's just, talk about your bad ideas.